Hi, my name is Marwan. I'm a technical developer advocate at Nebius, and in this video, we'll deploy a large language model using serverless endpoints on Nebius. The goal is very simple. In just a few minutes, you will have a working Inference API backed by a GPU without managing any infrastructure. We'll deploy the model using vLLM and then test the endpoint from Python. A serverless endpoint is a managed inference service. When you deploy one, Nebius provisions the GPU, starts the container, and exposes an API. You don't manage any virtual machines directly. The platform handles that for you. And once deployed, the endpoint stays running and is ready to serve requests. I'm starting on the home dashboard, and from navigation sidebar on the left, I go to endpoints. And here I can usually see my existing endpoints, but now I have none. Then I'll go and create an endpoint. I will choose my container port as 8000 and then go to advanced settings. Here, my entry point command will be Python, and then I will need to have my arguments. I will add my arguments, and for the record, we're using a Quen model for this video. And these arguments will start the vLLM API server. It loads the Quen model, and when the endpoint starts for the first time, the model is downloaded automatically. After that, I will add my SSH key and choose token authentication. I will need to copy my token because this will serve as the API key for my endpoint. Next, we choose our GPU platform, and in this example, we will work with an NVIDIA H200, and we will work with a single GPU. Afterwards, we need to make sure that we have a public static IP so that we can connect to our container and click create. Now I can see that my endpoint is starting and provisioning. When the endpoint starts, a GPU virtual machine is created, the Docker image is pulled, the model is downloaded, and then the API server starts. Once the status changes to running, the endpoint is now ready. At this point, you can also open the logs tabs, and this will give you container logs in real time. This is very useful to confirm that the model loaded correctly and the API server started without errors. And if anything went wrong during startup, the logs are the first place to check. Let's go back to the endpoint overview and check for our public endpoint. We will copy our public endpoint because we will use this address in order to send requests to our API endpoint. Let's quickly test our endpoint from a Jupyter notebook. Here I'm sending a simple post request to the endpoint public address. And there are two important things to notice are the URL, which contains the IP address we copied earlier and the chat completion path. And also we're using our authorization token that we configured earlier. Here I have my prompt, and when I run this, after I specify the model and provide the user message, the model generates a generated response. And this actually confirms that our serverless endpoint is working correctly. Let's quickly recap what we did in this video. You deployed a large language model using serverless endpoints on Nebius, and Nebius handled the GPU provisioning and service lifecycle. You then sent a request to the endpoint from Python and received a model response. At this point, you have a working Inference API running in the cloud. The same workflow can also be done using the Nebius CLI if you prefer a command line approach.